aims his pistol at the sky. Wait!
Hey, it's not stealing if it's your joke. A routine milk run is abruptly interrupted by a mysterious planet seeming to come out of nowhere. Suddenly, Kirk and Sulu disappear from the bridge. Spock organizes an landing party to rescue Kirk and Sulu, consisting of Bones, this hot guy, and this not hot guy. You see, the Enterprise crew knows that it's smart to wear masks when going outside, especially if it's an alien planet. Is there air? You don't know. The landing party finds Kirk and Sulu frozen in place inside a castle along with a bunch of other artifacts on display. Hey Bones, it's your ex! Then the castle door slams shut and a dude in what appears to be late 18th century French garb appears. This is Trelane, aka that bitch. Not to be confused with Harry Mudd, who is this bitch. Important distinction. That bitch is sort of a capricious, manic pixie dream boy with godlike powers and a vindictive streak. Does that remind you of anybody? Trelane is a history nerd, especially Earth history. He's really into Napoleon, hence the costume. Due to the sheer distance between Earth and Trelane's planet, Gothos, Trelane is behind on human history by several centuries and wasn't aware that humanity had achieved warp capability. Trelane wants Kirk and the boys to hang out with him, but Kirk is like, how about no? And Spock beams them back to the ship. That bitch isn't having it and appears on the bridge. He sees Spock and makes fun of his appearance.
Isn't quite human, is he?
My father is from the planet Vulcan.
And are its natives predatory?
Not generally. But there have been exceptions.
It's the one and only Eagle Double G.
Trelane transports everyone back to his castle and hosts a dinner party. After assuming Uhura is Kirk's slave, not touching that one, that bitch magically gives her the ability to play the harpsichord flawlessly. Trelane insults Spock again, and Spock delivers another, what we in the academic community call an epic clapback.
I object to you. I object to intellect without discipline. I object to power without constructive purpose.
McCoy mentions that Trelane's food and drink has no taste to it, meaning he's not as omnipotent as he presents himself. They surmise that that bitch has some kind of device that's assisting his powers, and since Trelane never strays far from the big mirror on the wall, they figure it must be the source of his power. Kirk uses Trelane's ego against him to goad him into a duel, Hamilton Burr style. Trelane declares that he gets to shoot first, clearly not understanding the 10 duel commandments. When Kirk insists that they shoot together, Trelane threatens to shoot Spock, and we all know how Kirk feels about people threatening Spock.
Let him go too, Charlie.
Why?
Because I'm telling you to.
All right.
Captain.
Trelane throws away his shot, and Kirk uses his to shoot the mirror, destroying Trelane's power source. Trelane is pissed and throws a hissy fit. The Enterprise crew escape to the ship and fly away from Gothos at top speed, but the planet starts chasing after them. Kirk decides to beam down and settle this mano a mano. Trelane has changed into a judge's robe and wig and puts Kirk on trial. Kirk is immediately declared guilty and sentenced to hang. Kirk instead tempts Trelane into hunting him, which ends up more like a game of hide-and-seek with swords. Kirk breaks Trelane's sword, causing that bitch to throw another tantrum. Suddenly, the fun and games are interrupted by two voices from the sky. They admonish Trelane like parents would a child, and in turn, Trelane whines at them like a cranky little kid in need of a nap. The mother and father take Trelane away and apologize to Kirk for their son's behavior, then send Kirk and the Enterprise on their way. The Squire of Gothos is basically Charlie X 2.0, but way more fun. I'd rather watch William Crandall's supercilious Trelane than a sullen teenage incel. Crandall was so right for the role that he was hired after reading just one paragraph. According to IMDb, the role was originally intended for Roddy McDowall, but the executives were worried that McDowall's look paired with Trelane's foppishness would make Trelane seem gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Remember, the Hays Code would still be in effect for another year after this episode's airing. Trelane is obsessed with armies and soldiers. He idolizes Napoleon, and he's fascinated when he learns of Starfleet. He calls Kirk and his crew military men and says they love their uniforms. Kirk and his men insist the mission of Starfleet is one of peace. So here's a question. What is Starfleet? Starfleet's purpose is defined as exploration, research, defense, peacekeeping, and diplomacy. At least one of those things could be defined as within the parameters of a military. I do believe that most Starfleet officers believe in upholding the virtue of intergalactic peace and coexistence. at least in theory. I believe that most Starfleet officers would do whatever it takes to avoid war. But make no mistake, when the chips are down, Starfleet is there to protect Federation worlds and interests. As Renegade Cut points out in the video essay Star Trek The Leftist Future, Star Trek uses military titles: Captain, Lieutenant, Commander. It's an insightful video, the link is in the description below. In Star Trek Into Darkness, which is a garbage movie but I guess a broken clock is right twice a day, Scotty protests the addition of new weapons to the Enterprise as they would be a risk to the ship, and he says the line, "This is clearly a military operation." Is that what we are now? I thought we were explorers. So maybe Starfleet doesn't define itself explicitly as military, but when needed, it acts in the role of an armed force, like when the Borg threatens the Federation, or the Dominion, or the Klingons. But here's the thing. The idea of what a military is for us in the 21st century may be vastly different than what it is for those in the 23rd century. Trelane speaks of militaristic figures as bloodthirsty killers and conquerors. He marvels at the phaser and how it could easily kill millions. Many on the left today think of the US military as instruments of the economy, serving as a constant presence in Middle Eastern countries to protect American oil interests. And in the future, the military is depicted as a friendship mission, only fighting when forced to protect itself. Screenwriter Paul Schneider was inspired to write The Squire of Gothos after watching children playing soldiers. He intended it to be an anti-war story. America was in the middle of the Vietnam War, and by '67, people were getting fed up with the country's involvement in a war they felt like they had no business being involved with in the first place. Trelane is a little boy playing soldier, and is careless with the lives of those that warfare actually affects, because he is a child, who doesn't understand the cost of war. And what's worse, he doesn't care. I can't f***ing imagine what it'd be like to be controlled by a man-baby with unending wealth and power, a raging war boner, and no regard for human life. God help us all if someone like that was ever elected into a position of authority. Wouldn't that just be a f***ing nightmare, wouldn't it?